when we talk about self-love, the idea is, do you choose to focus on people's perception of what is beautiful and ugly in you, or do you choose to focus on your own qualities, what you deem to be beautiful, what you deem to be ugly, and which parts of you are you ignoring, which parts of you are you avoiding because you consider them to be ugly, and how can you transform your perception about them? Because everything is just a story, right? It's not that you are ugly or beautiful. That is obviously very subjective. And the way you frame it is going to determine whether it is ugly or beautiful, because we develop a lot of self-perception in our childhood that is completely based on other people's opinions. A child cannot have self-perception because a child is very unaware of itself. Generally speaking, like a child is aware of its needs and such, but it is not aware of its perception of itself. And its self-perception is almost entirely influenced by the world. So whatever the parents say about me, I take that on as the truth and the absolute truth, especially in very young age. If my parents say certain things about me, I will take them on as the absolute truth. So if my parents say I am bad, that is not only what my parents think, that's what the world thinks, because in that stage of my life, my parents are my world. If my parents are not giving me attention, and I start feeling unworthy of attention because they are busy doing other things, they're busy on their phone, they're busy with their work, whatever, the child will feel the phone is more important than me, work is more important than me, I am unlovable. And it will not be able to say, my parents don't have time for me in this moment. That is a very advanced adult thought. In that moment, the child will thinks very simply. So it will just believe, I am not good enough for them, I am unlovable, and it will not say I am unlovable for my parents. I am unlovable. Finish, stop. No, in general, for the world, for the universe, like I am unlovable. And it will carry this until it is healed. It will keep carrying this program, repeating this program, and unconsciously start creating a reality where this keeps being proved true. So even if the people around you are showing you love, you will start doing things to make the prophecy come true that I am unlovable. So you will keep pushing people away in or behaving in certain ways that finally they will stop loving you, or they will start confirming your prophecy. Even if they don't stop loving you, they may love you and hate you, or they may love you and ignore you and avoid you. And then you will ignore the love part and you will just focus on the part that I am unlovable. They don't want to spend time with me. I am not good enough for them. So the key point here is that we are taking on a lot of things in our childhood without realizing. The opinions of adults are everything for us. And not only the opinions about ourselves, their opinions about everything become our opinions. So even if they don't directly say something about you and they say something about another person, their friend, your friend, another race, another country, another whatever, if they say something about that, what they don't realize is that you are unconsciously associating and picking up everything. And in the future, if it happens that you have one of these qualities that they were insulting, that they were talking bad about, you will feel bad about it even without realizing why am I feeling bad about it, because it was not even said directly to you. So suppose gay people, Okay, like there is already a lot of stigma about this. And suppose in some cultures, people are like, someone is found out to be gay, and in the family, they're talking bad about this person. And at that time, you're a child, of course, you don't know your sexuality, but you grow up and you realize you are gay. You have already picked up so much stigma about gay people, and you don't even realize why you hate yourself, why you are ashamed about yourself, why you cannot accept yourself. This is just one example, but there are so many examples. It can be about being unacceptable in any way that is unacceptable in your culture, for your specific family, parents, whatever. There's so many things that we judge and reject in other people, and children are picking up all of that without realizing that a lot of the times they end up hating themselves unconsciously. And this is very disempowering because, of course, if you cannot accept yourself, you are disconnected from your own power. You're losing your own power because that part of you is locked away. That part of you is trapped, even if it is not a bad part, right? In like bad and good is just a judgment, but it's just a part of you that is not allowed to come to the surface. A part of you that is not allowed to show up in the way it is. So you have to put a lot of energy to keep it repressed, to keep it hidden, to hate it, to reject it. All of that needs energy. And energy and power for me are synonymous. So if you're using your energy to reject yourself, you are disempowering yourself. So a lot of the times, empowerment is simply about accepting who you are fully. You don't need to do anything special. Like, of course, there are many forms of empowerment that you will be learning about in this course. One of them is self-acceptance. The other thing that happens is that when we are rejecting ourselves, obviously we don't have compassion for ourselves. We end up becoming very critical and judgmental. We are basically copying the behavior that our parents had towards this unacceptable person, whether it was you who was unacceptable or another person. When you discover it in yourself or others, you will tend to behave the same way towards them. You will tend to be judgmental, critical, rejecting them, hating them, whatever it is, shaming them or shaming yourself. And part of this work is developing compassion. And compassion may not sound like something that is related to empowerment, because for a lot of people, compassion, empathy is like being soft, it is being weak, or like it is something that generally people will not associate with power. But when you start practicing it, or start trying to practice it, you start realizing it requires a lot of courage, it requires a lot of energy and a lot of power to be compassionate with anyone, whether it is yourself or others. It requires a lot of power to be compassionate, because you have to overcome all these judgments and critics that live inside you and outside you. To be able to be you requires a lot of power. If we consider that your natural self is compassionate, which is what a lot of people discover when they are doing the work. So being compassionate is, for me, synonymous with being you, and that takes power, because you have to overcome all these external programs that you have picked up from other people. You have to overcome all this stigma, and that requires power. To honor yourself, to trust yourself, to accept yourself, all this requires power, and to do it with compassion, not to do it in a harsh or mean way. A lot of people are fighting battles to be themselves. And one thing is fighting a battle on the outside, and sometimes that is necessary, but a lot of the times they're fighting with themselves to accept themselves, or putting pressure on themselves to accept themselves, or being very serious and heavy about it, or very forceful about it. I have to accept myself, or I have to be this way, or whatever. It's very forceful. instead of being compassionate. Because being compassionate is not easy. People think it is soft and easy and it is a coward's way out. Empathy is like, cowardly or soft, but it requires way more courage than being harsh with yourself. In my opinion, being harsh is the easy way out because it doesn't require you to feel anything. It's just very disconnected from yourself. It's just very, yeah, I would say disconnected. That's the best word for it. I think also people's definition of power is very twisted because people associate power with what power is called in the world, what definitions other people give to power. And a lot of people associate power with authoritarianism, dictatorship, cruelty, meanness. And then they polarize power with compassion being the soft side, being the weak side, or being the nice side. And basically, they see the two things as opposing. Whereas the reality is that real power is compassion. Real power is compassionate. And in my opinion, it is about bridging these two polarities, bringing them together. That is real power, which has very few models in this world. They are available, but not easily. Like even when they are available, there's a lot of narratives about it that contaminate it, that pollute it, and then people have a difficulty in filtering out the narrative from what is actually happening. So I think if people can realize that power doesn't have to mean what we think it means or what models are available, that there are other forms of power and we can choose what kind of power we want to embody, what kind of power we want to embrace. If you want that kind of authoritarian power, you have to also know what is the cost of that. People don't realize that the cost of that usually is to dissociate from yourself, is to unconsciously you are hating yourself and others. You're being mean not only to others, you're also being mean to yourself. One of the aspects of this course that will be part of this course is that people tend to hate mean people because they're mean to them and to take it on in a personal way. But one of the important realizations in this course is that mean people are wounded people and they're as mean to themselves as they are to others. And they're basically just repeating what has happened to them. They may have taken it a bit further and it keeps getting a bit worse with each generation. But they have or like may or may not get worse. Sometimes it may even get a bit better. But generally speaking, whatever we are putting out in the world is what has happened to us. Until we heal it, until we do something to change it, most of the times we're just repeating what has been done to us. It's the same point that you were talking about before, like whatever opinion we are taking on from our parents, we're also taking on behaviors, we're also taking on definitions like power, love, compassion. What does all this mean? For men to be compassionate or empathic is weakness. For men to cry is weakness. All this is just a narrative. It's not the truth. It's not the reality. It's just a cultural program that many people have come to accept and believe. But ask any man what takes more courage, crying or not crying. What takes more power is crying. It takes a lot more courage to cry because of the rejection that a lot of people experience because of that, because of the narrative. It takes a lot more power to be able to be vulnerable and cry in front of others. or even to yourself. A lot of people don't even cry to themselves because they are constantly judging themselves and saying, I have to be strong, I am better than this, whatever. All this I am better than this is automatically you have it, like for me, that is a sign that you have a program that is judging you for not being good enough, for being weak, for being imperfect in some way or unacceptable in some way, and you have to be better. You cannot be as you are. You have to be something different to be accepted by others. I see compassion and empathy as our natural state. That as you are healing, you just become more natural. And like what I can say about the natural state is that we tend not to uh, think about it because it's just part of us. And we don't have to really put an effort in being natural once we have healed. So the work, in my opinion, is I call this unspooling the unconscious, which is just another way of saying deprogramming the unnatural state, is discharging all these behaviors that we have picked up that aren't part of our essential nature, that are just programs that we have developed through habit and in some cases through pressure and force from the outside world, or having to behave a certain way to survive. A lot of our programs are also out of survival mode because we do not know anything else. We do not have another way to survive. So a lot of people become mean and become uh, oppressive because that was a way for them to survive. And again, taking out the judgment from these people, taking out the criticism from these people, and realizing that underneath all these behaviors is a very wounded child that needs healing and that can be healed. A lot of people think that what is the point of bringing up all these childhood traumas and just remembering them again and going through the suffering again. And that is not what it is. The reality is that you are suffering because of your childhood traumas every single moment of every single day, just that you're doing it unconsciously. You don't realize that your suffering is happening because of that. And by going through it again, but in a guided space with the proper tools, you can actually heal it and stop the suffering once and for all. So one of the ways I like to put it is that humans are microdosing suffering from each trauma that they've had on a daily basis. And of course, when you've had a lot of traumas and you're microdosing each trauma, it's not no longer a microdose. It may be a microdose of a particular trauma, but it is a mega dose of suffering that we're going through every single day. And basically, what consciousness development is for me, one aspect of it is to go through each particular trauma and to heal it so that those microdoses disappear from your daily life. And it may not change overnight, but slowly over time, as you keep healing these traumas, you start feeling better and better because you're suffering a little bit less each time and each day. So you are facing the pain in one time, but you're not just going through pain for no purpose and no reason. You're facing the pain to heal it. The other thing about compassion is that I feel like there was this show I was watching recently that had a very good line that every real thing has an artificial counterpart of it, which I think is very important in the context of compassion. That There is real compassion, which is very natural, which is just part of who we are. And then there is a compassion that is very artificial, that can look natural, but if you really know how to see, you know it is artificial. And this kind of compassion is just a show of compassion. It is just to show that you are this nice person, this good person, this compassionate person. But the problem with that is that when you're doing it just for a show, this is very common in narcissists, that narcissists may look very nice in certain situations, and that is what makes them appealing. That is what draws people to them. But once the camera has turned off, and this may not be an actual camera, but once people are not looking, or at least the target audience is not looking, their other face comes out, and they can become very harsh and mean. So I think this is what, again, it's not a judgment on narcissists. It's just to use that as an example that even narcissists are wounded, even narcissists are hurting. And when they are putting on this face, when they're putting on this mask, and we are all doing it, we are all putting on a mask for someone, somewhere, something. When we are putting on this mask, right, we are not only are we dishonoring ourselves because we're pretending to be someone that we are not, also when the mask comes off, we are being harsh with ourselves. And it's only to realize that you can actually be compassionate with yourself, and you can actually heal yourself, and you don't need to wear a mask anymore. You can just be natural. And sometimes that may not look pretty, but it's okay. Sometimes you may look a certain way that is unacceptable to others, and it's okay. It's to allow yourself to be imperfect. It's to allow yourself to be human, instead of this artificial perfection that the culture is glorifies in a certain way. But what are you really looking for? Are you looking for that kind of validation that is only available when you're wearing the mask? Or do you want to accept yourself and want people around you who accept you for who you really are? Okay, if you are not perfect, there will be some people who may not get along. There will be some people who, for a certain amount of time, need to be away from you. But okay, like in time, the more you accept yourself, the more other people will accept you. The more you allow other people who are not accepting you to leave, the more you are accepting yourself, instead of trying to conform to their opinions, instead of feeling ashamed or guilty for not pleasing them. Just allow them to feel what they feel, allow them to be disappointed, allow them to reject you without taking it personally, to realize that their rejection may be talking more about them than it is talking about you. And yeah, like whatever your imperfection, accepting them doesn't mean that you have to be a shitty person. Accepting them just means that I accept it, and once I accept it, I can work on it, I can heal it if I want to, right? Like, not all acceptance is about accepting shitty parts of yourself. Sometimes acceptance is just, okay, like this is who I am, and it's okay. Like, if we take the example of being gay, like there is nothing to change in that. In that case, it is just accepting.